Welcome to Module 9 of Ethical Hacking Essentials, and we're going to be looking at mobile attacks and countermeasures. So I want to ask you a question. Do you own a cell phone? You know, just a few decades ago, if you answered yes to that, you would be seemingly one of the rich, elite people. Maybe you had a car phone or something like that. But now cell phones are ubiquitous. Mobile devices are ubiquitous. Tablets, cell phones, and many other mobile devices. So it's very important for us to understand what some of their issues are and how those can be taken advantage of by attackers and how we can put together countermeasures to counter those types of attacks. So what we're going to be looking at in this module are several things. Number one, we're going to start off looking at the anatomy of a mobile attack. We're going to look at the different platforms for mobile devices and the vectors of attack. We're also going to be looking at vulnerabilities for mobile platforms. We're also going to drop down and look at MDM, mobile device management, that we find in businesses and enterprise organizations. And then we're going to have a look at security tools that we can use to safeguard our devices in terms of mobile security. Let's get started on looking at and understanding the anatomy of a mobile attack. All right, so if you look at a mobile device, this is a mobile phone, a couple of them, and they are able to communicate through 3G, 4G, 5G, 6G, depending on what era you're watching this, and Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, and wired computer connections, but they do so much more than that. So just like a tablet or a desktop or a laptop computer, they can run multiple apps, and we are able to obtain apps from app stores. We're able to obtain apps from off-app stores, like through APKs for Androids. And also, those apps are very often cloud connected. So we have app stores, we have cloud-connected apps, we have the telco provider themselves. The fact that connecting to websites through multiple browsers on these devices, on my Android, I think I have about 3 different browsers that I can choose from to use. And all these different browsers allow you to go to websites. So if you can go to a website, that means you can run a web app. And if you can run a web app, then you have all the layered issues with web apps and web servers. If you can go to the App Store, we have layered issues with app stores. If you can go through Wi-Fi, we talked about that a few modules before, you have all the layered issues of Wi-Fi attacks. If you can go through a telco provider, we have issues dealing with hacking telcos, looking at routers, looking at autonomous systems and BGP exchange. And if you're going through a corporate gateway or a corporate intranet, we've seen all the different ways that you can attack a network. So the issues are huge in terms of Wi-Fi. So it's very important for us to understand, boil down some of the basic risks with Wi-Fi. So the OWASP Top 10 Mobile Risks, this comes from 2016. They don't always change it every year, so this is just fine irrespective of what year you are in. Number 1 is improper platform usage. And that doesn't mean that you used your mobile phone to keep a door from closing all the way. This means that it wasn't set up correctly. It wasn't, you're running apps on it that are not programmed correctly. The platform is not being used in the method for which it was designed. Also, we have insecure data storage. So on the SD card or the internal storage of your device, it might not be encrypted. We have insecure communication. These are unencrypted communications and associations with other devices. Same with authentication. It's not secure. It's a very simple authentication exchange, and it might be to an open Wi-Fi, and we may not have sufficient cryptography. Maybe you're using some type of secure communication, but the cryptography has its own vulnerabilities, and that exchange is problematic. We have insecure authorization. So we have authentication, authorization, and accounting, AAA, and authorization is letting the entity, a program, a person, a user that is trying to contact a resource, let them know whether they can or not get in contact and use that resource. So it may not be put together correctly. It could be insecure. We may have poor client code quality. Oh, maybe they had me putting together the code for the app. I'm not that great of a programmer. It takes a lot for me to get together a good piece of code. And but maybe the team in another location that maybe they don't have good secure coding practices. And so the code, the actual programming that went on in the background has problems. Or maybe the code is fine, but somebody who understands a lot about coding and a lot about hacking tampered with it. Maybe the app was download reverse engineered, and then after being reverse engineered, something else was added to it to make it something that the attacker could use. And there are extraneous functionalities. We were just talking about Bluetooth and how there can be wormized attacks through Bluetooth and control of a phone taken over through extraneous entities and so on. So look at all these top 10 mobile risks. They're still extremely important for our mobile devices right now. If we look at the anatomy of an attack, of a mobile attack, this is exactly what I was mentioning earlier with apps and browsers. And I didn't even mention texting with SMS, and I did mention the network and web servers and databases and applications. So just a few things. I'm just going to kind of go through a survey of some of the attacks that can take place against all the different systems running on a mobile device. Number one, you can do phishing. Oh yeah, get an email, get a text, something in the browser, maybe even a man in the mobile or man in the browser attack. A man in the browser attack is when usually there's a plugin that is loaded, usually through phishing or other means. And what this does is hides in the background and waits usually until you go to a financial or banking site, and then it intervenes in that transaction. In this case, it's a hack that's hanging out in your phone through the browser. We also have broadband and baseband attacks and smishing. We also have improper SSL validation and escalation of privileges. And we have zip directory traversal. So yeah, you can do directory traversal even in your mobile phones, and side channel attacks. All kinds of attacks through your apps. And this is just a very partial list. If we look at the network, we have Wi-Fi with no encryption. And so everything you're doing from your phone through the Wi-Fi network is completely trackable. And we have rogue access points, just like we were talking about in the Wi-Fi module just a little while ago. DNS poisoning, SSL strip is when you have a website that's running HTTPS, but the website has the ability to switch to HTTP, and you use SSL strip to tell it, hey website, I can't do HTTPS. Can you please switch over to HTTP for me? And then the website switches to HTTP, and we say, gotcha! And we start downloading all the data from that site. We also have web server issues like cross-site scripting, which we've talked about before in previous modules. You can go there if you haven't seen that, and misconfigurations and brute force attacks and hypervisor attacks at the web server. Most web resources are actually running, the web resources are actually running in hypervisors. And so any hypervisor attack would be devastating. And then database, SQL injection, privilege escalation, even the ability to use stored procedures like XP_CMD shell that you'll find in like MySQL to send commands from the database to the operating system and hack that. So an attacker can take all these 1.1 million malicious packages, all of these 6,000 mobile ransomware Trojans, all these 39,000 mobile banking Trojans, and use them against many devices, right? To do what? Surveillance, turn on the audio, the camera, the video, location, grab financial data, and like for instance, TANs, these are stealing transaction authentication numbers, fake antivirus messages popping up that people respond to. They can steal data, your account details, contacts, logs, whatever data is on your phone can be snarfed. Your phone, my phone, if I'm not carefully guarding it, can be a part of a DDoS attack, click fraud, and even impersonation, and sending email messages, posting to social media, using your phone, using my phone's logged in information. One thing that I haven't seen much of with phones, but if you can get a big enough infection going across a huge number of phones, is you could probably use phones for crypto mining. Just have a little slice of crypto mining going on in 1 million phones. That's a lot of CPU power to mine cryptocurrency, something like that. So lots of different potential attacks to a phone that can profit an attacker. And now that brings us to discussing mobile platform attack vectors and vulnerabilities. So how are they going to get at you? Well, they're going to try to get you with malware. They're going to try to root your phone so that they can take 100% control over it. Viruses, application modification, even modifying the base underlying operating system. They're going to try to tamper with data, modify it, get you to get an application installed in the phone that modifies transactions or tampers, or maybe a person. It could be, I've done this before, jailbroken and rooted devices, and that makes it a little bit more dangerous, a lot more dangerous for security on that device. There's also data exfiltration, where data on my SD card, micro SD card, can be stolen, or I can have screen scrapes. I'm on my phone and maybe having a video or a voice chat or a call or whatever, and an attacker who has a foothold on my device can take a picture of that screen. That's a sound of a camera, by the way. Or even copy USB key, backing up my phone to another device. Data loss because of application vulnerabilities. Or maybe someone gains physical access to my phone. How would that happen? Unapproved physical access. Well, the phone is so small, it can be left in places. I remember I was doing some work for a client of mine a while back. And on my way out of the office, I realized I didn't have my phone. So I went back into their data center where I was working, and I looked around and I didn't see it anywhere where I was working. So I went back through every room that I had been in and others, and I still could not find my phone. So I got on a computer system and I did a find my phone through Google, and I made my phone ring, and sure enough, I heard it ringing back in the data center, the last place I was. And the data center is very dimly lit, and on a device that was covered with a black tarp, so some equipment that was just covered up, there was my phone with its black cover and black screen sitting there in the dark. That's why I didn't see it. Everything was black and it was dark in the room. But it was so small, so easy to lose. One other time, I was in a big hurry. My kids were very, very young and they were being very fussy. I was distracted. I had stopped at many different places, including getting groceries. And then I drove home, and it wasn't until I got home that I realized my phone was missing. And so I did a find my phone, and sure enough, it located it at the grocery store, my last stop. And as I'm walking in the grocery store, I greet one of the people walking by that works there, and I mentioned about my phone. He says, "Oh, here it is right here." He had it in his pocket, and I was able to get it back from him. So they're very easy to lose. How many times have you misplaced your phone? I mean, you can leave it in an airport, you can leave it in a supermarket, you can leave it in a grocery store, you can leave it at a bank. And at that point, it really just depends on if somebody is honest or not, whether they're going to return it or steal it, right? So unapproved physical access, that's what we're talking about. Losing that device, somebody else getting access to it. And so there are a lot of platform risks, malicious apps in stores. This is number one. And the main focus of this is probably going to be Android in the Play Store. One item that I like so much about the Play Store is there are much more wild apps in the Play Store that you can't get in, at least you couldn't for a while in the Apple Store for your phone. I remember I downloaded an app that was a tricorder. You know Star Trek, where they have an instrument that scans, and it took my whole phone face and turned it into my phone screen into a tricorder screen, and I could use my phone sensors to do EM fields and sound and all that kind of stuff, and it gave me a little scanning screen. It was actually really cool, but for my iPhone, Apple didn't allow the use of sensors on phones in that way, so there's no way that I could have found an app for an iPhone like that. But since it's a little bit more creative, it's also going to be home to more malicious apps than in the Apple App Store, which really spends a lot of time verifying apps. We'll move into mobile malware, and whether you have an iPhone or whether you have an Android or your Microsoft phone. What? You have a Microsoft phone? I'm surprised, but remember those? There used to be those and all kinds of other phones. These days it's just two, isn't it? Apple and Android. But irrespective of whether you have an Apple phone, iPhone, or an Android, yes, number 2 is you can get malware. So let me stop right here and say this. If you don't have antivirus software on your phone, then you're making a mistake. You need to make sure and get some antivirus software on your phone. That's going to be very important to protect you. You never know when an attack will strike, and all it takes is one time. When that software protects your phone from the attack, you'll be really happy that you spent the huge amount. You know how much time it might take you to find and install antivirus? It could take you almost 3 or 4 minutes. That's a lot. So anyway, it could save you a lot if you find your device under attack. And then we have app sandboxing vulnerabilities. You know that the app that you're running, all the apps that you're running on your phone, they are sandboxed. And what happens is we don't want the app that you're running from the App Store to escape that sandbox, but sometimes they do. And that's what we're talking about with sandboxing vulnerabilities. Weak device and app encryption. So the device isn't encrypted, the protocols aren't encrypted, the applications aren't communicating in an encrypted way. That's another vulnerability/risk. And then number 5 is going to be OS and app update issues. You have an application running on your system, and you've had this app for a long time, but little do you know that there have been vulnerabilities found in the app, but there have been no updates from the manufacturer, and you don't know because that's not something that we generally check. And the OS may have vulnerabilities that haven't been patched by the ISP. They haven't sent an update. So that's an issue. Jailbreaking and rooting. I've seen a growth in jailbreaking and rooting as mobile phone organizations have been dealing more with tracking software and tracking stacks. And people have been wanting to contacting me more than I've had in a long time to jailbreak or root their phone so that they won't have to get the tracking app on their phone. Seen that a lot of that, but jailbreaking and rooting phones is very dangerous for that phone in the present because you can brick the phone while you're jailbreaking it or rooting it. And then secondarily, you have to be very careful what apps that you install on your device because they could be actual malware. Next, we look at mobile application vulnerabilities. So you don't know who wrote the app. I mean, they have the developer name, but who is that really? And what kind of skills do they have? It's possible that's the first app they wrote, and the reason they were able to write the app is because they spent 2 weeks watching YouTube videos on writing web apps, and they published their first app full of vulnerabilities, and there I am using it, right? So also privacy issues, depending on where you are, leaking your geolocation data. Weak data security, talked about that a little bit already with the idea that we're having encryption issues, not enough encryption, excessive permissions. With excessive permissions, that can cause the user to work around those permissions or to damp them down. We also have weak community security for phones, and of course physical attacks, right? I was just talking about leaving your phone in different places. One item that I mentioned a little bit earlier is the fact that there are security issues arising from app stores, and that's because of poor vetting of the app, allowing fake apps to enter the marketplace. And so the attacker will distribute a mobile app without enough vetting to the store. And you know what? The Google Play Store and the Apple Store, where you get apps, their app store, those are not the only app stores for those devices. For rooted devices and for partially rooted devices, there are app stores with hundreds and sometimes thousands of apps that you can go and visit. And sometimes you'll find an app that is a hack, because those stores are even more poorly vetted in some cases than Apple and Android. So you have to be careful with what app or apps, of course, that you use on your mobile device. So I was mentioning sandboxing issues. If you look at this illustration here, you see that you have a sandbox, right? You have your system resources, that would be your memory, CPU, all the throughput to data storage, etc., user data. And then you have your sandbox environment, and inside that sandbox environment is an app that gets a representative. It gets a go-between to system resources and so on. So it's restricted access to resources. It's unrestricted within the sandbox, and it's mediated to the actual resources by the sandbox. But if an app is poorly written, or if there's a problem with the sandbox code, the app can escape and access your local resources, causing a lot of issues, including phone instability and hack attacks. All right, let's talk about mobile spam. Well, spam is unwanted communication. Usually it's going to be email, but in this case, it's not just email, it's text. And you don't know where it came from, and there are advertisements, malicious links filling up your SMS. And if you're being charged for this stuff, it can really raise your bill and up your finances, because you have to pay more for stuff. And a lot of times, the spam attack is done just so the attacker can pick up a little bit of cash from what you click on, fill out. And even if they can just get data, even if they don't get your financial data, the data they do get can be sold on the dark web, and they can make a little bit of cash. So yeah, financial incentives to get your data. Other types of attacks, you've seen these before. You get an unsolicited text message saying, "Dear, you have won lottery of $1 million. Go to," and they give you a link to claim your prize. Well, where's the link? I really want to click on that. I won $1 million? That is amazing. Wait a minute, let's see. You have won prize, phone number, social security. So all I have to do is, wait a minute, are you telling me that all I have to do is fill in my phone number, my social security number, date of birth, and a few credit card numbers, and I can win an arbitrary prize? Oh, this is so wonderful. Let me start filling that in. No, we know better, don't we? We're not going to fill in this information or click on that link. Or call numbers. They'll ask you to call a number, and they'll do a phishing attack on you. So it's just bait email to get you to do something. And it's sometimes effective, though, because it fools people into responding to it. And it could be number 4, that the mobile user is not ready to resist the messages on their phones. They see a message about a lottery. They're like, really? That sounds great. And they go for it. I remember dealing with little kids. And with little kids, that's why they like toys. They like sparkly, jumpy, cartoony looking things. And I remember having one of my young children and deliberately showing them the sparkly, tinkly, jumpy, flashy ads on the sites. These are children's sites. And say, see those? Those are ads. Don't click on those. because they're trying to make you click on them. I'm explaining it to my kids. And they looked at me and said, wow, because I really, really want to click on that. It was very attractive to them. And they were able to communicate to me that they really wanted to click on it because of how flashy and blinky it was. And if the message is good enough, it can make a cell phone user want to respond to it, right? So also it's very difficult to weed these out. And if you don't have a good antivirus that's tuned to smishing, SMS phishing, then you're going to get those messages. So a couple of examples. PayPal, your account has been locked. Please click on this link. And maybe you have PayPal. Maybe you just did a transaction that you weren't sure about. And then all of a sudden, an hour later, you get this PayPal, your account has been locked. You're like, oh my goodness, really? Oh, and you click on it. No, never click on a link that you get in a random text message, right? Never click on any link in any text message. If you have a friend that sends you a link, respond back and ask if they actually sent you that link, because sometimes their phone, their account can be hacked. You notice they don't give you any name. They don't know who you are. Dear customer, dear nothing, dear Westpac Bank customer, we detected some unusual activity. Click here. So never respond. Also, again, look at this one. We have a phone number, 200-555 or whatever, right? And to activate. And then if you call that number, there's going to be an automated process to get information out of you so that your information can be sold and your accounts can be drained. All right, another thing we need to talk about is good old Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. And then here is an issue. So you have an open Bluetooth and a Wi-Fi connection. You're paired to Bluetooth and you're paired to Wi-Fi. And they're both open, meaning that there is no encryption. You're wide open to blue snarfing and blue bugging attacks, which we talked about in a previous module. And because your device is now a pass-through device from Bluetooth into the interior network, you can infect devices in other locations on the phone. So be careful with how you set up Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. Make sure that it's encrypted, that you don't use any unencrypted public Wi-Fi routers, and have Bluetooth at the same time. There is an attack that is really germane to mobile phone users, and that is Agent Smith attack. Now, you may not have seen the 3 original Matrix movies. You remember the Matrix? When Neo, he is a person who is the star of the show, and he says, I know Kung Fu. And Morpheus, his benefactor and guide, takes him into a realistic environment where they fight, and there's man against the machine. If you ever watched the Matrix series, I recommend them. But in one of the movies, there's this program, looks just like a man, just like a regular human, but it's not, named Agent Smith. And what Agent Smith does is he'll walk up to somebody in the Matrix, and he'll take his hand and stick it into the chest of the person, and this like shiny black stuff will start flowing around the person, and then they'll turn into Agent Smith, and then it'll be 2 Agent Smiths, and then they do that, and there are more and more and more Agent Smiths everywhere. So in an Agent Smith attack, that's when we're turning other things into the attacker's tool. So in this case, let's say that you have WhatsApp or something like that. What the attacker is going to do is drop a malicious mobile app in a third-party app store. So not an original, but a third-party app store. And then the user is going to download and install that malicious app. Once they do that, the malicious app is going to Agent Smith the other apps. So it's going to replace them, and like putting its hand in the other apps, they're going to morph into do the bidding of the Agent Smith app. And now the user starts getting extra advertisements, exploits are downloaded, there are beacons, contact with command and control services, critical information stolen, all because of an Agent Smith attack. Right, so that is a very interesting attack. There's another one too called SS7. SS7 is Signaling System 7. It's a communications protocol. And with SS7, you can send information through the cell network between devices. And one of the biggest dependencies of SS7 is a mutual trust between operators, and there is no authentication. So you need that mutual trust. So what the attacker does is they intercept the call, the text message, and they act as a man in the middle, and they can control that communication between the devices, and because there's no authentication, right? So that's an SS7 vulnerability. Another one that's a pretty bad one is a SIM jack. So this is a SIM card attack. You know what the SIM card is, right? So in your phone, the card that is really the identity of your phone and some of the processing of that identity on the phone on your provider's network, that's your SIM card. So what a SIM jack is there is a vulnerability that's associated with your SIM card's SAT browser. It's a pre-installed software on SIM cards that have preset instructions, and they exploit that using a SIM jacker to do things like capturing the location. That's a simple one, right? Monitor your calls, forcing device browsers, redirecting them to connect to websites, performing DDoS attacks, all kinds of stuff like you can do when you can run the SIM jacker and do a SIM card attack. And there are other SIM card attacks too, by the way. We're only covering some of the most basic attacks that can happen through mobile. Another very amazing tool that if you ever get the chance to get to know really well is Metasploit. In this case, we are going to use reverse TCP on a specific host, and we're going to use that to attack an Android device, creating a binary payload, sending to that target Android, and then controlling it, gaining control over the Android. So you can even use Metasploit to hack an Android device. But wait, there's more. If you have an Android that is rooted, what I suggest if you're going to be an ethical hacker, one of the things that you can do is you can create your own hack droid. It's an Android that you buy off of eBay or something like that, that you're not connecting to a cell network. You're getting it so that you can install hacking apps on the phone and use Wi-Fi. So you can use Xeonti, you can use Network Spoofer. For instance, the low orbit ion cannon will only run on cell phones. So let's say that you are doing a pen test on a company and you want to do a close-in attack on the company, but their security takes your laptop and all your other tools, but they allow you to have the cell phone. But little do they know, it's your hack phone. And you can run a DDoS attack on them, a DOS attack using low orbit ion cannon, or do other stuff with phone exploit or Orbit proxy or other tools. So there are a lot of tools. I will say there are thousands of tools that will only run on rooted Androids. And so if you want to make a hack phone, that is one excuse to root an Android. There are other tools that you can use, and most of these are going to require a jailbroken iOS, an iPhone that's jailbroken, password recovery tools, network analyzer tools, iWeb Pro to attack Wi-Fi, and many, many other tools. And so if you want, it's a little bit more difficult to find the tools because they aren't so ubiquitous. They aren't just everywhere. But you can actually make a hacked, or I'd say a jailbroken, iOS-based hack phone, and just you run it off of Wi-Fi. So yeah, you can do that. It's possible. All right, now let's talk about the need to manage mobile devices here in Module 3. So we have this tool that we use at even the small business level, not just the enterprise level, called MDM. MDM is mobile device management, allowing organizations that have control over cell phones to manage them. Cell phones, iPads, desktops, laptops, whatever it is you want to manage. You just put an agent on that device, and back at the back end, the organization is able to do over-the-air application updates and do checks of the phone, do a remote wipe of the phone if it gets stolen, items like locate the phone, locate the tablet. So quite a lot you can do with an MDM solution. One of the reasons we often will need an MDM solution is because of models that allow employees to use cell phones. One of those models that allow us to use mobile devices is BYOD, to bring your own device. So I can bring my own Android, my own iPhone, whatever it is, depending on this organization, into the workplace and communicate with the organization's data and maybe even run apps from the organization. It's really nice because it increases productivity. I can take my own phone and do work away from the office or even in the office in places where I may not be able to get work done. It's great for employee satisfaction, and the reason for that is with other mobile models for organizations, they buy the device and you can only use it for business. And like right now, you can be lent by your organization an iPhone 6, and it just won't be very satisfying. An iPhone 6, come on, how old is that? But if I can go buy the latest Samsung or the latest Google phone or whatever, I'm going to be happy. It's my phone. I bought it. It's nice. And it's flexibility, right? I can use my own phone. I can use it at home. I can use it while I'm traveling, and I can still keep track of work stuff, and it's lower cost for the organization. Now, I will say this, though. Most organizations with which I have worked that had BYOD did not reimburse. But a large percentage of organizations that allow BYOD for actual work to be done on an employee's mobile device will reimburse that employee for the use of that device for work purposes. And in doing so, and I was just reading an article recently about studies that show that Kobo devices are about cost an organization about the same as BYOD, right? There's BYOD. Kobo is company-owned, business only, where you have a phone that the organization gives you, the organization purchased, the organization manages, and you can only use it for business stuff, no personal stuff. And it actually can cost the organization less over time to buy their own mobile devices, configure them, and lend them out to employees than BYOD, because of paying out those stipends to employees. So keep that in mind. You might see your organization switch from BYOD to Kobo one of these days, company-owned, business only. So there are risks with BYOD, confidential data. The employee might not properly lock that data down. Other data leakage security issues at endpoints, wireless access points at the ISP, disposing of the device. I might have my Samsung Galaxy S8. That's kind of an old phone, right? And I'm like, oh man, so glad I can get rid of this. And I upgrade to the latest Samsung Galaxy, and I just get rid of my old phone. But my old phone, what if on that SD card or the internal storage, there were gigabytes of company data and app data and so on? That's not good for the organization. Because I'm BYODing my device, I need to be very careful with the organizational data. And also support for many different services. So let's say that I'm working for an organization that has a BYOD policy, and I'm working in the department that works with managing the MDM for those devices. An employee comes in and says, I have a phone that's having trouble. What network is it on? It's on AT&T. What kind of phone is it? It's a Shinnencon 5000. A Shinnencon 5000. Never heard of that. It's not a phone I've ever heard of. I've never seen any phone like this. What is it? You know how many different types, styles, makes, international versions of Androids there are out there? You can order some off of eBay for $10. And is your company going to support it? I think that needs to be defined in your organizational policy. Also mixing personal private data, stolen, lost devices. We've talked about this before. And lack of awareness. The employee just doesn't know what some of the risks are. That's why it's so important to constantly educate employees and then do it again and then do it again and never stop so that they can be aware. And because it's the person's own phone, you might have a network policy that says that you can't use Facebook, you can't use Netflix, you can't go to gambling sites, porn sites, you can't go to hacker sites. But guess what? It's your phone. So while you're working on your laptop at work, you have your phone propped up next to you, streaming Netflix, right? You've just gotten around your organization's network policies. Fortunately, it's not on the network, but it might be streaming through the Wi-Fi network. It's a possibility. So that's BYOD risks. Now let's have a little discussion about mobile attack countermeasures. So you say you don't want your mobile device to be attacked either at home or at your organization on the job site. Well, let's talk about what you could do to help prevent that from happening. So there are going to be the OWASP top 10 mobile controls. And what is a control? It's anything that stops an entity from getting to a resource. So if I want to get to the front desk of a organization, there's a door with a lock. And if I don't have the proper means, I can't get to the door and I can't get to the front desk. If I want to get to a folder in a specific location in a computer system on a network, and I have a login that gives me access to it, then I can, right? So we have everything from keys and locks to passwords and biometrics to other items that will allow you to get to the resource you're looking for. So, right, so identify and protect sensitive data on the mobile device is one of the first controls, right? So we want to stop people from getting to that sensitive data. We want to stop people from getting, using controls over here, to password credentials. We want to stop people from getting to data in transit. We want to stop people from doing that. Guess what we need to do? We need to implement good controls. One of those controls is IAM and AAA, right? And over here we see AAA, authentication authorization. It doesn't say accounting. They're talking about session management. So this isn't AAA. This is AAS, right? So we're doing authentication, and session management. We want to protect our APIs. We want to integrate with third-party services and applications and make sure those third-party services and applications are secure, paying attention to storing data and content on our phones, and making sure that we have good controls, again, for paid-for resources. There could be an actual paid-for resource that the organization is hosting on the user, on the employee's phone, and they're really on any app that's on an employee phone, and that app is from the organization. There needs to be AAA, authentication, authorization, and accounting, so that, let's say someone picks up the phone and the screen has not died yet, and they click on the organizational app, they should have to log in to it, right? We want to be careful with provisioning and distributing phones and software, carefully checking the runtime interpretation for code errors. In other words, we're going to be looking at that code at a very low level to try to find errors in the code. So some general guidelines for mobile platform security. Don't load too many applications. You know what? Now you tell me. I mean, this is actually one of my problems. I always have too many applications. And so right now I have a phone that has 64 gigs of internal storage, and I have to use third-party tools to manage the apps to make sure it doesn't fill up. And so I'm steadily hunting for a phone that has 128 gigs of internal storage so I can load more applications. But yeah, we don't want to load a bunch of photos to social networks. We want to always assess what our security is. We want to maintain management and control of our devices, install applications from trusted sources like the Play Store and the App Store from Apple. And security wipe or delete data when you're disposing of the device. Be very careful to do that. If you're not using GPS, turn it off. If you're not using Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, turn it off. And never become a throughput, a conduit through which traffic from an open Wi-Fi network can travel from there or back the other direction to a Bluetooth open network. So be very careful with that. All right, so there are tools. Like I said, it's important. Here's my phone right here. It's important that you have mobile security on your device. One of the best ones out there is Malwarebytes. I just love what their presentation on the phones. Very good stuff. There's Personal Lockout. There's Zimperian ZIPS. That is a intrusion prevention system. BullGuard Mobile Security. I'm testing BullGuard right now on mobile devices. And so far it looks pretty good. Norton Security for iOS. Komodo. Very good security tools that they have. And so irrespective of the devices we have, we are going to be using devices for our own purposes. We're going to be using mobile devices for communicating at work, at home, etc. We need to make sure that we can do our best to assure that that device is as secure as possible against attack vectors, malware, and the many vulnerabilities that it's possible to have. So we have attacks that can happen against mobile devices. We have countermeasures and security tools we can use. And guess what we're going to do in the next module? We're going to move into a discussion on IoT and OT attacks and the countermeasures that we can set up to protect against attacks against that. So that brings us to the end of this module, and join me for the next one.